It's not raining. At least not yet. You can never really trust anything here in town. Now, tonight I am here to tell you the true gruesome history of our beautiful capital. Yes, trust me, by the end of this you'll see Edinburgh in a whole new light. And I'll warn you, it's
started to cool. Of course, we had the Ice Age. Periodic ice ages came along, and with them, huge walls of ice and rock. And these glaciers were incredibly destructive. Walter Scott. Has anybody heard of this writer? Yep. If you want to get an impression of the man's influence, go down to Princess Street Gardens. Okay, and in Princess Street Gardens you'll see a ginormous monument. It's one of the tallest monuments dedicated to a writer anywhere on the planet. And it's dedicated to Sir Walter Scott, hugely famous and successful poet and novelist from the 19th century. Now in 1818, Sir Walter Scott found an old dusty document in a library, and it seemed to suggest that something that we had been looking for a very long time was right here in Edinburgh Castle. Something that we had lost. What do you think Scotland had lost? Any ideas?
Independence from...
Independence? Well, that's one thing we lost. Anything else? Nice weather. Yeah, another good answer. What we had lost, folks, was our own crown jewels. How do you lose your own crown jewels? Well, you touched on it. In 1707, the United Kingdom was born. Okay, the Parliament of Scotland and England voted to come together to create a parliamentary union. And this is when the United Kingdom as a state was born. Now this wasn't really supported widespread here in Scotland. A lot of people were opposed to the union when it was passed. And there was a lot of paranoia, okay? A lot of people were worried that the crown jewels would be taken to our new capital, London, and we'd never see them again, all right? So what did we do? We hid them. We hid them so well that we lost them. 100 years later, nobody royal charter to search the castle high and low. Of course, everybody thought that they had been on some remote island or some really remote part of Scotland, but no, they were here underneath our nose the whole time. Walter Scott goes into an old storeroom, right? He finds a big chest, and inside the chest, there they are, wrapped up in some cloth, the crown jewels. At least not yet. You can never really trust anything here in the town. Now, tonight I am here to tell you the true gruesome history of our beautiful capital. Yes, trust me, by the end of this you'll see Edinburgh in a whole new light. And I'll warn you, it's pretty grim. Tonight we will traverse the old town within the Flodden Wall. We will walk up and down the infamous Royal Mile, and we will visit one of the most haunted graveyards in the world. But before we begin, I should introduce myself. My name is Madam McKinnon, and I am dead. Yes, I have been dead for 200 years. In fact, I died in this very square. The problem was I didn't go up and I didn't go down. I just stayed here, doomed to haunt the old town for eternity. He then had to run across the courtyard in the dark, trying not to be seen by all of the guards. He then had to scale the wall and the cliff. He made his way halfway down, but suddenly he slipped. He fell and he died. Splat, there's me.
Now, you'd think that was the end. Ooh, just like that. I know. That was the end of the story, but it was not. You see, Edinburgh Council still wanted to put him on trial for treason. So they dragged his cold, dead, lifeless corpse into the courtroom and made him face the judge. I hope they opened up a window. He'd been dead for a few weeks. George Mackenzie. He was born in 1636 and he is best known for his persecution of the Covenanters, the memorial that we saw down there. Now the Covenanters, they actually called themselves the Lords of Erections, but we changed the name because it didn't age very well. So we now call them the Covenanters. And they are named after the Declaration of Covenant, or the Act of Covenant, that was signed in that very church there. And some of them even signed it in their blood. Yes, they were taking things incredibly seriously. You see, they were rebelling against King Charles. A little bit of history for you. King Charles was king of both Scotland and England, but they were separate countries and had separate churches. So when King Charles had said that he wanted the common book of prayer in every church in England and in Scotland, well, they refused, and they refused to the bitter end. Yes, there was a massive battle in 1679 called the Battle of Bothwell Brig, and during that time they fought valiantly against the English to try and make sure that it was only their. Of them were executed and 1,200 were taken prisoner, and they were marched here to Edinburgh's Greyfriars Kirkyard into what was to become their prison. Now, for 5 months on a cold and wet winter here in Scotland, they were forced to live with no shelter, no food, their battle wounds festering to the elements. But even worse, George Mackenzie was the man in charge, and George Mackenzie liked to play games with the prisoners. He would get them to dig horrible graves and make them lie face down inside of them. Now, the problem was is that if you moved, he would shoot, but not you. He would shoot your friends on either side. So you had to stay as still as possible. But this is Scotland and it rains. So imagine the rain starts to come down and the grave starts to fill up. You're faced with a terrible decision. Do you move your head and condemn those at either side, or do you slowly let yourself drown? Well, as you can imagine, that's why George Mackenzie got the nickname of Bloody George Mackenzie. It's estimated he killed about 18,000 people, or was responsible for that many deaths. Now, although he wasn't from Edinburgh, he asked that when he died, he would be interred here in Edinburgh, so that even in death he could watch over those that he persecuted in life. Well, if I know anything about ghosts, it's that they go through things. And so from that point in time, it does seem that these reports have continued on and on. So anyway, we're going to move on because people are trying to get in. If you want to have a look in, feel free, but you can't really see anything because they also put this grate on it. But have a look. Terrible, isn't it? It's a really bad poem. He is known as Scotland's worst poet. I know, it's a wee shame. We used to throw fruits and vegetables at him. You didn't bring any, did you? Okay, good, because I didn't write it, I promise. Also through there you'll see the outline of a school. This is George Heriot's. George Heriot was the goldsmith to King James VI, who loved jewellery. And he made the jewellery, so he was very, very wealthy. But he was a very kind man. He used to put lots of coins in his pockets, so whenever he would walk the old town, he could give little coins to all the poor that he could find. So he got the nickname of the Jingling Geordie, because as he walked, his pockets would jingle. When he died, he put all his money in a trust to build a school for the poor fatherless bairns of Edinburgh. That basically just means orphans. It's now one of the highest fee-paying schools in the whole of Edinburgh, but that's always the... But I'm actually going to take you to talk a little bit more about the graveyard, alright? But apparently the owner of that pub turned it round. Why? Because every single picture that anybody takes of it is in the background. Mary King's Close was particularly affected because it was a very densely populated close. People, of course, thought they were cursed. It had something to do as well with like the religions of the time. A lot of the people living there were Catholic. And this was at a time when Scotland was more Protestant. So people then said, oh, it's a curse from God. When really it was just because there was so many people living in that small, cramped space.
What's a close?
A close, it's basically an alleyway. It's all those narrow streets. In fact, I'm going to take you to one after this, so you'll really get to see what it's like. It's basically, yeah, just a narrow street.
Okay.
but it's actually because they would close at night. It was a way to try and keep crime off the streets during the evening. So yeah, so most of them are called closes or wine. They're wines if they wine, and they're closes if it's just a straight street. So the plague is ripping through Edinburgh. A very familiar sound would be a bell. A bell would come along, da-ding, 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 and somebody shouting, "Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead!" It was the Bailies of the Muir, and their job was to bring a big wheelbarrow and collect all the dead bodies. But it wasn't just the dead that would be thrown in, it was the nearly dead as well. It was also those relatives you just didn't like. Just throw them in. Anyway, these bodies would then be taken outside of Edinburgh. You remember the graveyard? That was the end of the Flodden Wall. So they'd be taken past it. And now Bruntsfield Links, it's home to the smallest golf course in the world. And it's lovely, all the little mounds are just... It's best not to go into it. It's also a great place in the summer to sit and have a beer and play some games, so we'll just not tell them that it's skeletons. Lots and lots of skeletons.
This is a close. इतने नजदीक नजदीक हमारे मुंबई के घर इतनी नजदीक नजदीक होते हैं वैसे तो wow, that's spooky.
So we won't go too far down here. So this is what the closes used to be like. Really, really narrow. And this is 7 stories high. Now imagine that doubled in height. There'd be no daylight even when it was like 12 noon or whatever.
A little longer.